And Vice President Kamala Harris will be speaking in just about a half an hour at a rally in Savannah, Georgia. NTD's Jason Blair joins us on the ground. Jason, what is going on there? I hear the music. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Steve. So there's a lot of energy here at the End Market Stadium. There's a lot of noise, a lot of energy happening. The capacity is about 9,500 people, and it looks to be pretty full, almost at full capacity. And like you said, Harris is scheduled to speak here pretty soon, within the hour. And then earlier today, they sat down, Harris and Walz both sat down with CNN for their first formal interview with the press. There's been a lot of buzz about it. I actually do have a early release clip from it where Harris was asked how voters should interpret her policy changes. Have a look.
The most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America, and by extension the globe, around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
So, Jason,
after the recorded interview, Governor Tim Walz did go down to Raleigh, North Carolina, and Harris did make a couple more stops on her bus tour before ending up here for the rally.
So, Jason, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have also been making stops on that bus tour in Georgia. Has the campaign hinted at what their strategy is for doing that?
Yeah, they have been here since yesterday, touring some of the southern area of the state, getting off of the beaten path a little bit. It's very similar to what they were doing up in Pennsylvania, kind of going off into restaurants and stores. And they have kind of hinted that they want to bring up the margins more around the cities and not just rely on the metropolitan areas like Atlanta, to win this state. And by actually coming here, they are showing that they are confident that this is a legitimate battleground, and they're willing to invest, some time and strategy into it. For instance, since Georgia has not elected or backed a Democratic president candidate only twice since 1993, one of those being Biden in 2020, where he won by only 12,000 votes. So this is, they are taking it seriously. They do have confidence that they can do well here. And that's why they came out and spent a couple days here in Georgia.
Jason Blair live on the ground there in Savannah tracking the Harris campaign. Thank you, Jason. And former President Trump has an event of his own this evening. We'll hear from Iris Tao about his town hall hosted by Tulsi Gabbard in just a moment. But first, we want to welcome in Aaron Call, Director of Debate at the University of Michigan, and Theron Bond, Democratic strategist, who will join us to discuss this much-anticipated interview of Vice President Kamala Harris and the future debate. Great to have you both with us. Theron, let's start with you. Harris will do her first interview this evening with her running mate, Governor Tim Walz. What must she address in this interview to reassure supporters and the American people, for that matter, that she's qualified for the highest office in the land?
The easiest thing to point out would be that she can stand strong on her own. I don't think that having her running mate participate in the first interview with her helps her a whole lot. Is it nice to see a show of unity? Sure. But she would be the president of the United States if elected, and we need to know that she stands strong and can speak boldly and loudly. She also needs to address things like election security, what her foreign policy would be, what school safety might look like, education, gun control. These are some of the burning questions that the American people want to hear. And number one on everyone's minds is how she's going to address inflation, proactively, reactively, and continuously until it gets down.
Now, Aaron, we definitely want to get your thoughts on the debate in just a moment. But first, what are you looking for in terms of the dynamic, I guess, between Harris and Walz?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very controversial vice presidential selection, going with Walz, who's someone who's governed a little more progressively, but more personable, and can really take the Democratic message, as opposed to a Josh Shapiro, more moderate, maybe could help in Pennsylvania. So when looking at their dynamic, how well do they get together? Do they supplement each other's strengths and weaknesses? But as already mentioned, they're a team, but Harris is clearly at the top of the ticket, and this is a ceremonial interview where generally the both participate in the first one, but as we go forward, Harris charting out her own course, having some distance from President Biden, and also using these interviews to really explain the metamorphosis, the transformations from some of the positions in the 2019-2020 campaign and debate to now. We've had an announcement of those changes, but a little bit more of kind of a rationale behind them, the evolution, what's caused those in the last several years, I think would be something to look for as future interviews occur as well.
Theron, Harris is wrapping up her two-day bus tour in Georgia, where she'll be focused on, where she did focus on rural communities. The road to the White House may very well go through Georgia. What should her strategy be to win over voters in this crucial swing state and others? And to Aaron's point, what do you make of some of her previous policies as senator, and even when she was also running for president of the United States, and kind of this pretty drastic pivot to the middle?
I think overall, when you look at how she's attempting to engage with rural voters specifically, trending in rural counties would be likely Trump voters. And so she's actually making a grab for those who may fall in the middle or identify as independent voters, or people who have previously been Republican, but maybe they're not that MAGA Trumper. So she's making a fair attempt. A lot of people in rural counties, they don't just care about farming, they care about education too. They care about how you're gonna fare on gun rights as well. And so I think with her showing to do that in Georgia, and it seems like she's being open to go where the voters are, it would be interesting to see if she comes to places like Mississippi or Tennessee, generally extremely deep red states that also have some of those similar types of voters. When we talk about some of her position changes, I think it's important for the American people to get a fair explanation. Yes, she has stances from when she was Attorney General, obviously when she was a U.S. Senator. She also ran for president before, and so she has some form of a foundation with where she stands on these critical issues. If she stands the same way now, or if there's been any differentiation, we need to know what that change is and what led to that change, and how that will determine the policies she creates if she is indeed elected president come November. But how she fares with swing states differs. Pennsylvanians, they may care more about the trucking industry, emissions, regulations on gas and things of that nature. Where if you go down to a state like North Carolina, they care a lot about education and gun rights. And while we think abortion and reproductive rights are a very critical issue for everyone, it has polled lower in a state like North Carolina. So each state wants to feel important, and they want to feel like the president and vice president are listening to their critical issues.
Now, Aaron, the Trump-Harris ABC debate just 2 weeks away, under 2 weeks away. What strengths does each candidate bring to the table? What are you going to be looking for? And what do you make of sort of all of the nuance that we've been watching play out? Debate is on, this rule, that rule. What do you make of it?
Yeah, the debate about the debate itself is kind of classic. as in the run up to these. And we saw a lot of different kind of historical changes in the June debate. We never had a debate that early. The no live audience, the muting of the microphones. Hadn't seen things like that, going all the way back to 1960 with Kennedy and Nixon. And so President Biden pushed for a lot of those radical changes, thinking it would help him. It turns out that it was a big boon to Donald Trump. He adapted well to not having an audience and the cutaway or side-by-side shots, not interrupting, or at least having the audience not hearing that, as opposed to when he was dinged for that in Cleveland 2020, helps. So he wants to continue that. I think that's where we end up in the end. I don't think that the hill that the Harris campaign wants to die on is this muted microphones or not. So I think that'll happen, and the debate will, and it's going to be maybe one of the most widely anticipated debates of all time. Such contrasting styles and histories and biographies, and the prosecutor versus the apprentice, and so it's going to be fascinating to see them. I mean, Donald Trump is a very effective counterpuncher. He knocked out and ended basically the political career of President Biden in the first debate, and that's how he made his bones in the Republican primary in 2015 and 2016. Very experienced and savvy from a media perspective. Where on the other hand, Kamala Harris is a former prosecutor, a senator. We've seen many of her high-profile interviews when she was in the Senate. Really held her own and bested Mike Pence in the vice presidential debate in 2020. So I think everyone's going to be tuning into that, and we're going to see the ratings from the June debate much eclipsed. The first time I think these two have ever been in the same room together, certainly the same debate. So undecided voters and others are all going to be watching this, and this is occurring much closer to the election when early voting starts, so the impact could be much larger.
And Theron, we just have 30 seconds. We still don't know, to Aaron's point, whether the mics will be on, muted at the debate or not. Harris's team wanting mics on, off. What, on again, off again. I can't get it straight. What do you make of this?
I think the request that each one of the candidates is making to what they want or don't want plays to their strengths and the other person's weaknesses. Vice President Harris wants Trump's mic on because he's subject to say something off the cuff that's very wild. And, he probably wants them off to prevent that. I think the rules should fare best for the American people if they both talk about their policies and how they will improve all of our lives.
Aaron Call, Theron Bond, thank you both so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Anytime.
And coming up, thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.